Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Good Chats. I'm joined by two special guests today. I have Daniel and Eva. So guys, our podcast today is called It's the Little Things, and it came up from a conversation we had almost 3 weeks ago now. I'd like to start off though with quick introductions, and you might build in how this came about. So Daniel, let's start with you.
Right, so I have a condition called cerebral palsy. So to explain that, I was born 3 months early, which I like to think of I'm just way too eager. So right now I'm going into my final year in creative digital media in TU Dublin in Tala. So that's kind of a broad media degree. So there's like TV, radio, graphic design, media studies, that kind of thing. And for the past 3 weeks, I've had the absolute pleasure of working with you guys in here on video editing podcast as well, which has been absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for having me.
Aww.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be part of this today as well.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you here, Dan, and to learn from all your experience in the media. We've learned so much as a team. Eva is, of course, a treasured member of the org dev team. Eva, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro and background for anyone who doesn't know you?
Sure, yeah. So I was born in Waterford, and when I was born, my family were kind of given a bit of a different outlook, I suppose, on my condition. So I had to have surgery straight away, or else I would be not living. And so was rushed to Crumlin about an hour after I was born for emergency surgery. I was then told a few weeks later, my mother was told, I would not have understood that, that I would never walk or anything like that, and that I would never get a mainstream education. So I now have a master's in marketing, and so I think I proved them wrong a little bit. So yeah, I kind of I like to prove people wrong, and so yeah, I did my master's in marketing, as I said, and I had some jobs in tech before, and I really enjoyed the feel of a tech company, and I was delighted to join Oracle, and I've been really happy here ever since, working as a project manager, yeah, that's kind of me. Yeah, I suppose actually as well, just to touch on the whole diversity thing, why it's so important to me. When I came to Oracle as well, I kind of thought, well, we're so diverse and we're so inclusive, and we don't really talk about it enough, and that's really something that's really close to my heart. So I kind of started talking to you about it, and we were kind of thinking we should do something about it, and we came up with the whole idea of a diversity week, which we had back in March, which touched on things like mental health and physical disabilities and LGBTQ and things like that. And from there, then we've kind of just been seeing how we can work on that. And we're delighted to have Dan here the last couple of weeks to kind of help us develop that a little bit more. And as part of that, then have this podcast, which is really great.
So lots more talking from us.
Yes,
including today.
Lots to come.
Thank you so much. And when we were chatting a few weeks ago, I was just fascinated listening to the two of you talking, and that's how we come up with It's the Little Things as the name of this podcast. Because at the start, Dan, you were saying, it is the little things and things that I wouldn't think of because I don't have to.
Yeah.
And this then led on to you guys doing a bit of an audit of our buildings here, and I know that you guys spotted some little things that I probably wouldn't spot. Do you want to have a bit of a chat about the experience of going around the buildings and seeing just how accessible they are?
Yeah, well, I think it was really interesting to go from the two perspectives that myself and Dan have. Dan being a wheelchair user, myself on the crutches. So it was kind of two different accessibility perspectives that we were looking at, which I think is really important when you're doing something like this, not to just kind of have one perspective, because everyone's needs are different and kind of everyone's experience with accessibility is different. I think overall we were pleasantly surprised with when we really kind of went through the whole building and all the different kind of day-to-day experiences that people and employees would have here. From kind of having lunch and even just coming into the building, and then also having meetings throughout your day and just getting around the building in general. Obviously, there were some things that we noticed that could be improved upon. Like a lot of our meeting spaces. That, like, obviously this building Block A is really modern and it's newly done. But obviously some of the meeting spaces are a little bit not as inclusive as we would like for people like wheelchair users and things like that. They're a little bit closed off. The other things are great, like the wider spaces though, and the amount of accessible bathrooms and that there are here is great, and obviously the lifts and things like that. I don't know what else you kind of observed, Dan.
Yeah, and particularly with the bathrooms, because the size of them is because the amount of bathrooms that I've been into before, and they're they have the wheelchair sign at the front, and they're tiny. So the space has been brilliant, and as well something that I noticed, which is I'm really envious of, is the adjustable desks that you have
Oh yeah,
in your offices. Because that's just brilliant. I suppose from a standard point of view, from like a posture element, in that you need to be sitting up straight for as much as you can be, but then for somebody like myself, and then for Eva as well, it's even more important because, well, for me, I'm sitting in the one position the whole time. So to be able to have that adjustment level available if I need it is a real bonus, and it's really positive. Yeah.
It can't have all been good now, guys. Go on.
No, like
Be honest.
there was definitely some room for improvement, and I think as well, me working here for over the past year, I've kind of noticed things that I find difficult, but then with having Dan from the extra perspective was really good as well, and we found things like some of our meeting rooms are very tight. So if there's the rooms that we have the kind of conference calls in, where there's the phone, and the phone can be placed quite far away, so somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with accessibility issues might find that difficult. Also kind of getting into those smaller rooms could be quite a challenge when there's a lot of chairs in them. And
I remember you mentioned about that a lot of those rooms, the sole function of them would be to have a conference call.
Yes, yeah.
And then you get into the room and there's a table there and there's enough space to get around, but then you get in underneath the table and then the phone is too far away. So you're having, and particularly for me, sorry, because I have rods in my back, 2 rods in my back, I can't lean forward past my knees.
Do you know what? That is such a little thing that everyone could just be aware of, because I know that I will think of it now, but I could easily have left the phone like further away than was needed, and just like the fact to move the phone forward. That is a little thing that everyone could be aware of.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just kind of doing what Access What It's Like This really teach you, that it's important to, when designing buildings like this and building them, is to have somebody maybe with a disability, physical disability, to maybe go through it and see where there are obstacles and where things could be improved. And I think it's important, because obviously there are laws to do with building new buildings that allow for accessibility to happen in them, but there are all those little things that just people might not take into account, even if they're engineers or.
And then like the amount of times that isn't even enforced to begin with, that like there is that law in place that every new building should be, with I say wheelchair accessible, but accessible.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's just not. And like something like you mentioned, Eva, about having people in these kind of situations on boards when they're playing, like something like that is so simple.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously simple, and it's like the fact that it's not being done is just baffling to me.
It's frustrating actually because
Yeah,
when you say it,
absolutely.
it's so simple to have
Yeah.
someone as a consultant.
And I mean, I was even saying it yesterday that it's like, it's almost that it's so simple, it's difficult.
I know.
If that makes any, I don't know. If
Well,
that makes any
sometimes
sense,
when the answer is so obvious, you don't think
Yeah.
you don't think of it. You don't think of the obvious things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I have to, because I feel like you're being very nice, Eva. There, even in our own team, you pointed out to me when you and Dan were having a chat about some of the tables which have like high stools, and I have been guilty of inviting you to meetings at those tables. You were too nice in the past to tell me that that wasn't suitable. I now know, but things like that, I suppose, people could be reminded to be a bit more aware of.
now you got leverage even.
Yeah, it's leverage now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I suppose when we're talking about little things, that is the little things, because to me, you might look at me and say, well, she's able to sit on a seat, that's no problem, but it's the height of the seat that people might not take into consideration that could be a challenge for me, and that's an easy mistake to make, or an easy assumption to make, that I'd be able to sit on that. So yeah, it is those little things that kind of make life a little bit less easy for me.
Yeah. Was there anything else around the building that kind of popped out?
I suppose it was just the collaboration spaces that really stuck out to me. That some of the things like a wheelchair user just had no access to, and when collab spaces are designed for collaboration and for inclusivity, and when it's just not there, it can be frustrating.
Yeah, and something else for me was, I mean, I have experience with this in college, that is the lift is quite small. Well, I'm talking from a college point of view, is very small, and it closes very quickly, and you're kind of like, hang on, that's not,
Yeah.
conducive. And then as well, like with the ones in this building, there are plenty of them, which is great. But again, they're quite small. And like for myself and Eva, the two of us can't travel in the same lift. Like I'd have to go up and then send it back down.
Yeah.
And it's just like little things like that. Like I know it's less than a 30-second journey or something like that, but it's little.
It can be lonely.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're there or thereabouts, but we could improve and we could all be a bit more cognizant of the little things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the facilities. And what about people's reactions? So again, it's something that came up at the start, and you said to me, just if you don't know something, just ask me. I don't get offended. You
Absolutely.
can just ask me. Eva, you also said to me, because I actually said to you, I'm sometimes afraid of offending people, and you had a chat with me about that as well. Can you talk to me a little bit, both of you, about, I guess, different reactions that you've had from people in different situations?
Okay, do you want to do it? Or?
Sure, I can start. Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed, definitely in the working environment, I've been really, really lucky that like I've never come across a negative experience in my working experience, especially here in Oracle. I find like everybody just accepts, just kind of sees you as you are, and it's kind of a situation which I really respect, and I like that. If I need help, I know that it's there, and I know that I can ask for it, but nobody ever kind of like fusses over me too much, or I'm here to do a job, and that's what I'm expected to do, and that's all I really could have ever asked for. So I really respect that. In terms of then outside of work, obviously there's obviously young kids are going to stare and go, what are those, but I like to think that it's just from a place of curiosity, because that's what it is, and nothing more. And I can't really get upset for people from being curious. Sometimes with the older adults, it's a little bit frustrating when they keep staring because they know better. But no, I definitely don't take offence to it. And I just take it as people don't really know how to react. It's something different, and it's something that they might not have seen before. So it's easy to kind of to have a look and kind of say, oh God, what is that like? And it's I don't really take anything bad in it, really.
Absolutely. I particularly with the younger kids and the reactions, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's the great thing about young kids, is that they don't know any different. They're just this big world, and they want to explore as much of it as they possibly can, which is just amazing. You know, we could learn a lot from them in that sense at times. I think, as you mentioned, Eva, it's kind of it's the older adults or even the parents of these kids in certain situations as well. Like I've had, I've had parents of children who you either have one of two reactions. One of them is they say, "Oh, be careful, get out of his way," kind of thing. That's one. And then the second one is, "Do you mind if he or she has a look at your hair and kind of explores it, so to speak?"
Yeah.
That is the perfect reaction. Because you're as impressionable as young kids are, you're not telling them that it's, there's something wrong.
Yeah, or to be afraid of. Get out
Yeah,
of the way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know, whereas like it's because they're so early, as I said before, they don't know any different. So if you have that kind of negative connotation towards it, of like get out of the way, they're going to inherently take that forward
Yeah.
and maybe avoid asking questions or being curious in the future.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier on, me personally, I'm completely an open book about it. Like I love slagging myself. Do you know? I mean, and some people might look at me at times and be like, "Really?" And I'd be like, "Yeah."
And you have a great sense of humour. You've been keeping us entertained all week.
Thank you. Glad to hear it. No, but
You're supposed to say it back, Dan.
and likewise.
I'm joking.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think
Um,
that also, what Dan was saying, that curiosity is really important. And I think the curiosity can open up a conversation. And I think the conversations that can be had are really important, especially in kind of a corporate setting where it's opening up the kind of taking the questions and opening up and having the open conversations rather than kind of looking, thinking, oh, can I help her? Should I help her? Just asking is important, I think, because it makes everyone feel a bit more comfortable and a bit more like they can communicate freely and openly. So.
Do you think that's a general, or are you guys particularly open people?
I mean, there are certain people that I look at and you're kind of going, you could be doing more, but you're deciding not to. And I think sometimes I see that and I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
Do you know? Because, and I think that's, I mean, we have touched previously on the whole mental health side of things. And I think particularly for me, with the mental health, that's a huge thing for me, to be able to stay kind of positive and on top of how I'm feeling and,
Yeah.
constantly checking it, because and that's why I'm so grateful that I have an incredible support network around me, because that's a massive help. But like, that's like, if I'm active and I'm doing things, it takes my mind off the fact that I'm in this situation, which means that I can just live and do what I want to do in maybe not the most conventional way, but I can still do it. And I think with me, I've even had situations where it's kind of hard to explain, but I'm reminded that I'm in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
which sounds strange, because sometimes it's like you have to remind yourself that you're able a lot of the time, whereas I'm the other way around. Sometimes I forget that because my whole attitude towards it is I want people to see me, and to see me for who I am, and this is just a box with 6 wheels on it. You know, and then but that's the difficult balance of it, is that like you want people to see you, and then when it comes to say night out or things like that, you need people to see both.
Yeah, so you mentioned that before, and
You know.
on the say social life and the that it can be different in terms of, for me, if I get a call to go out tonight, I can go. I don't have to worry about where the place is or having loads of notice. But you were saying it's not always that easy for you, and people don't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a night out can mean a lot of preparation for me, and kind of like I need more notice, and then like some of my friends want to go to places that are up flights of stairs, and then I don't really know how to approach that, because I'm like, well, I don't want to deprive them from going out to where they want to go, but I also want to be included as well. And like I've had situations in the past in secondary school where I've been excluded by my whole year almost, and it was tough, and like, but then I was trying to think, oh well, is it they're going places that I can't go, or they just don't want to include me, or what was it? So it's, yeah, there's a lot of things that come with it, and as Dan touched on mental health there as well, I think that's another little thing that I think people don't take into consideration when they think about disability and the effect that it has on you. It's like, well, why am I any different, or things like that. And I think it's really important that, like, to stay positive and to kind of think, well, I have two choices here. I can either kind of accept this and I do what I can, or just, be the best that I can be, or I can just sit there and just wallow in it, which is not helpful to anyone.
Yeah. Do you, like, what do you personally do for your mental health? Like, we all have our own techniques, but you two seem to be two of the most positive people that I've met. Full of energy, always in good form. I wish I could be more like that.
Do you want to meet me first thing in the morning?
True. You generally get in earlier than me, but probably before your coffee.
It's just so I don't have to talk to anyone.
So apart from coffee, what other things do you do that you find is really good, positive for your mental health?
Coffee's a big part of it, but no, I think just kind of taking stock of what you have is really important, and also just how lucky you are. Like, I love my job, I love like, I have great family, great friends, and just thinking of what I can do. Like, I'm a very ambitious person. I like to keep thinking of how I can move forward and kind of what I can achieve, and yeah, I don't let that hold me back. There was a time that I was very down about it, and as I said before, I literally just said to myself, I have two choices, and it's never a good idea to just take the choice where you're just going to sit there and wallow in it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Dan.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, for sure. One thing in particular for me is music. That's a big influence.
Do you sing?
No. You would probably be mentally scarred if you heard me sing. But I just, in terms of music in general, like, I've been through over the past 5 years, there's 2 years in particular that I've been through very difficult times that I won't go into now. But music played a massive part in me being able to kind of, well, get through that, I suppose. On top of, as you mentioned, having an incredible support network and having, targets. Targets for me is a big thing of, like, I want to do this by such and such. Like, I think during those difficult times, like, targets were particularly, okay, I'm going to get to this point and then it's out of my hands. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, I've as long as I get to that point and I've done all I can, that's all I have to worry about, and then it's out of my hands, and what'll happen will happen. But I'm always of the view that as long as I'm doing the best, as you mentioned before, Eva, doing the best with what I have, then that's all I can do. And sometimes that means me being a perfectionist and overthinking a hell of a lot, which is the most frustrating thing known to man. But yeah, no, it's like I always try and like embrace it, and I think music is definitely a huge part. And
So I have to just check that you have better taste than Eva, who went to Westlife concerts recently.
It's a nostalgic thing.
What's your music tipple of choice?
ooh, okay, well, favorite artist would be Demi Lovato.
Okay.
Moving on. But I was actually,
That's probably a no, then, isn't it?
I was
We'll
just
agree to disagree on that one.
I was just going to touch on going back to the mental health thing. Just in our diversity week there in Oracle back in March, it really brought home that everyone has something they're going through. It's not just people with disabilities, or everybody has something they're struggling with. So it's important to just kind of understand that, and it's not just us that that it affects, but it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's just one aspect of something that comes with being with having a disability.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about some of Dan's fancy speaking appearances. So Dan, well, apart from you've been on the Late Late Show, I know that much, but you've also very impressively spoken at the EU Youth Conference. Can you tell us a bit about that experience?
That experience was massively surreal, to be honest. So I am a member of the National Youth Council of Ireland. So that's basically an organisation that brings together young people between, I have to get the ages right now, 15 and 30, I think it is, from all across Ireland to discuss issues that are important to them, and then we can then bring that forward to government to enact change if it's all agreed on and everything like that. And every 2 years, I think it is, they have an EU youth conference so they have two delegates from each EU member state that go over and discuss a variety of different issues. And I heard about this, and I up until that point, I'd loved everything about the National Youth Council, and because for me, all I've ever wanted to do is make a difference, and just like being around people like that was incredible. So I was like, why not? But I think the big issue with that was around like access and kind of accommodation and things like that. So I spoke to the youth workers, and they said to me, listen, just fill out the application, and if you get accepted, we'll take it from there. And it was in Vienna in Austria. So
Nice.
yeah, fab. So they said they'd contact Vienna, and to be honest, I was filling out and I wasn't really expecting anything, but then at the same time you're kind of going, it's a national youth council, like focusing on youth and kind of inclusion and empowerment and all these kind of things, and you're kind of going, if it's not accessible, that's kind of like,
Not good.
it's kind of against the what's the word?
Philosophy?
Yeah, so to speak. So, it turned out that by some miracle I got accepted, so that was really cool. And just between emails between myself and the contact here in Austria, we managed to organise accommodation and itinerary and all this kind of thing. And so I was over there with two other delegates that I knew from the National Youth Council, and we were talking about the EU youth goals. So there were 11 different goals, so such as like mental health, as we mentioned, inclusive societies, which I think for me is obviously hugely important, and there was like sustainable environment, that kind of things like that.
So what did you use the opportunity to speak about there?
I was kind of talking about, well, particularly for me would be inclusive societies, being in the situation that I'm in. So I was trying to kind of come at it from a point of view of having a disability and how important inclusive, and obviously I was working on the other goals as well,
Yeah.
but they were the particular ones that I was passionate about. But just coming at it from the angle of having a disability and how important that is in order for me to live my life to the fullest possible degree without any unnecessary restrictions.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredible experience, to be honest. I look back on it and I'm like, did that actually happen? You know, it was really, really special. And I suppose another small thing about that is it was a big kind of step forward in my independence, just from being like away from home and being with a PA that I had worked with before in school, actually. Who's an absolute legend, loving bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it was just really, really special. And just to be like around so much like positive energy, and like everybody's looking forward and looking, like I always like to say, chasing progress. Everybody was there to chase progress and to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's all I've ever wanted to do. So yeah, no, it was special. It was really, really good.
So will we see your face up on one of them political billboards anytime soon? Any aspirations for a political career?
Not quite.
No.
Not quite. I think that's, to be honest, I think that's where the media comes in for me, is that I think media offers me the opportunity to share my views on different topics without having a kind of political tie
Yep.
to it. And I think there's this kind of thing with politics, that there's like an automatic thing where you're towing a party line or something along that line. So and media in general is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and I love it. So it's the perfect balance, really.
Yeah, I can see you now. I can see you taking over the Late Late Show or new show, your own show.
I appreciate your confidence in me. That's very kind.
No worries. So what about, to finish up, other little things, not necessarily outside work, that you think people just don't think of?
In terms of, I suppose it's not really things that I would expect people to think of, but there are things that, like, in my everyday life that like people wouldn't think of. It's small things like I can't, with my crutches, I can't carry a cup of coffee. So I've like, you know, or a plate, for instance. So I can't carry, like, if somebody was like, oh, let's go for a cup of coffee, like I won't be able to carry that from the counter down to where we're sitting. Or so like I've like invested in my own little flask now, which I bring everywhere, and if I lose it, I freak out. Yeah, so things like that, and I have my like lunch bag that I carry around, so I don't have to carry my plate and stuff like that. But it's just little things like that you'd never realise that are a struggle to me. Yeah. So yeah, that's just kind of little interesting things that. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've similar.
I mean, for me, I think the big thing for me is the social side of things, because I absolutely love going out. That doesn't mean I'm like, I go out all
You're
the time.
a raging party animal.
Yeah. No, that doesn't necessarily mean that. What it means, I love being around people and making people happy.
Aw.
And I know that sounds cringy as hell, but it's true. So like things that are just in terms of like places being accessible and like giving you notice, as we mentioned before, like where you're going, or like if you don't want to invite me, that's fine. You know, like, but it's saying that like I've been invited to places and then I check it out and it's not accessible, and you're kind of going, right. You know, it's little things like that. And like, as I mentioned, I just love being around people
Yeah.
and having a good time and being as positive as I can. But I suppose it's just about living, for me, it's about living life to the utmost possible degree without any any unnecessary restrictions.
Yeah.
And restrictions like that are entirely unnecessary. And I think for me, a big thing is just taking that little extra bit of time being like, oh, we can't do this because he won't be able to get in, or we can't do this because such and whatever the reason may be, or we can do this because it is accessible, or we can do this because whatever the reason may be. But little things like that mean a huge amount. And I do mention it to my friends a lot, you know, that like this means a lot to me. And they hear it a lot and they're kind of like, yeah, we know. But it's kind of like, you know, it's because it does.
Yeah, it's a
Do you
pity
know?
we didn't, everywhere wasn't accessible. Like, a pity we hadn't reached that point. But I think it's something that you start to become aware of when you have to become aware of, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because now I will go into somewhere and go, this wouldn't be accessible. Eva could come here or something like that. Whereas before, I wouldn't have even seen the step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always good to just spread that awareness to people, because there might come a time where they meet somebody that they need to take these things into consideration, and it's sometimes unfortunate that it has to be in those, that we have to wait to meet somebody who has access issues to even think of them. But
Yeah, it
that's
is.
just, it's just human nature, really.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, no, that's yeah.
One thing I actually forgot. You're just back from Singapore, which is super cool. How was traveling to Singapore, and how was accessibility in Singapore?
Yeah, so I suppose that's another aspect of the little things. It's traveling. It's a whole other ordeal when you have accessibility issues. But like, obviously the trip to Singapore was amazing, and I was delighted to be able to get the opportunity to go. But yeah, so like, obviously you have to take into consideration, you have to book assistance before you fly, and so you have to be kind of taken throughout the whole airport process, and which is great. It's always gone fairly smoothly for me. So I travel in my wheelchair because it's just easier. But then there's always kind of the thing, oh God, will I lose my crutches, or will I I won't be able to get off the plane? But yeah, so it's fine. It's good, but it's just something that extra that we have to take into consideration, that obviously other people may not have to. So it's not as easy to just jump on a plane, and for us. But yeah, it all ran smoothly. There's no mishaps, which is good.
Yeah. Traveling to Vienna, how was it?
It was good from what I remember. Yeah, what was it, a year ago now? Yeah, no, it was all smooth. I mean, once everything was, it did take a long time to get everything sorted. You
Yeah.
know, in terms of tickets and getting everything done like that. But the actual process of it, I suppose it was more down to me actually making it more difficult in some cases than it needed to be, just from like the experience of traveling like independently. Like, that was kind of the first experience I did have of that. So I was kind of learning as I went with that. So, but in a general sense, it was very good, and it was really enjoyable as well.
Cool. Anything else, guys, to wrap up? Final message?
No,
for
I
the
think-
Little Things podcast.
I think it's just interesting that over the past few days that we have, like, looking at the different aspects of the little things that can affect people, and I'm sure people without physical disability, with other maybe different needs that people would have, there's other little things for them. But it's just it's interesting to think and just be mindful that other people are going through things, and just kind of put yourself in their shoes for one day, and just see what challenges you come across, and it's always interesting, I think.
Absolutely. Like, I think I've always had the view that if it's accessible for people with disabilities, whether that be physical, intellectual, or otherwise, it's accessible for absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
And that's literally as simple as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And having these conversations are really important. That's why I think it's great that we're doing it here, and just to open up the conversation and just be open and upfront about what's difficult and what's not, and having those honest conversations, I think are
Yeah.
really important.
And if people have a question, asking is just the
Yeah.
best policy.
Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask. We're not going to bite.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Okay, well, thank you very much, Eva and Dan, our celebrity guest for the last 3 weeks. And of course, Dan
Thank
will be
you very
doing
much.
a recording of his own podcast, Dan Undara Doability. Little plug for you there, Dan.
Thank
Everyone
you.
should listen to it. He releases it weekly, I believe.
We do, yes.
So, signing off from Good Chats. Until next time.
Thank you.